The premise that a lot of parents have is that school achievement and happiness are negatively correlated. They're not. Everything you learn at university, you can learn outside of university. You go to university for different reasons. So if an 18-year-old is comfortable giving up the Stanfords and the Whartons of the world to go out there and take that risk, in my view, one should never take that away. The world gives undeserved respect to formal education qualifications.
Welcome to another episode of BaytCast, brought to you by Bayt.com, the Middle East's #1 job site. My name is Rabea Ataya, and today I have the great pleasure of sitting with Navin Valrani. Navin is an old friend. We've been friends for over 30 years. He's been a friend, a confidant, and a massive inspiration throughout those 30 years. And he's also the person I know who's most obsessed with learning. And just to give you some background on Navin, if you allow me. So Navin grew up in Dubai, went to UPenn for his undergrad, did an MBA at London Business School, then led one of the largest conglomerates out of the UAE, Al-Shirawi Group, as the group managing director, and still found time to do a master's and a PhD in education in the University of Pennsylvania, founded with his wife a nursery, Ladybird, then went on, founded schools, Arcadia, which have been super successful, and on the side does college counseling. All super impressive. And Navin, I'd love to start right at the beginning, if I may, and primarily on nurseries. It feels today that parents are putting as much time and effort into selecting a nursery or getting their kids into nursery as our parents did getting us into universities. So maybe some color on what's happening there and how rational or irrational it is.
So firstly, we can get into a discussion or a debate on the utility of early years education. I think most of the research, I know most of the research points to tremendous benefits of being in an early years setting. It is where the return on time invested in a student's journey is the highest in terms of cognitive development, physical development, social, emotional development.
And what years are those when you talk about early years?
This is 0 to 4.
Okay.
Those are the nursery going ages here in this country and pretty much across the world. It is actually shocking how few countries have made early years education mandatory. Having said that,
and you feel it should be given the research?
It should be. Given the research, I feel there is a place for every child in a nursery setting. So giving time to selecting an early years setting is crucial. However, what's happened here, as in most cities in the world, wealth creation has led to a level of competitiveness within society, which then leads to not necessarily rational decisions when it comes to selecting the institution where your child should be entered. So whether it's a nursery or school, a high school.
And what would be a rational choice? So I think of nurseries as a place you go and you get messy and you finger paint and you have fun, and primarily a place where your parents park you so they can have time on their own. But if it is rational, what are the rational choices other than sort of proximity and cost?
Yeah, so proximity, number one, right? Yeah. You want a place that is close to home, so that, God forbid, if there's an emergency, you're able to access the place in the shortest possible time. The second is exactly what you said, right? Play.
Yeah.
What is the outdoor space? As much as, we're in the middle of summer right now, but Dubai has 6 beautiful months of weather. Much of those are during the school time. And to have your child have the ability to play in an outdoor area under supervision while being allowed to be messy and creative and do sand play and play in the mud kitchens and is a tremendous benefit. So I would actually focus on the spaces when it comes to selecting a nursery. Not the brand or the reputation. Of course, that does carry weight. But when you visit a nursery, focus. I would urge parents to focus on the space available.
And what about systems? So we hear about Montessori and the other systems, and there are all sorts of blended approaches. Does that really matter in your mind?
Yes, it does matter. I mean, there are so many methodologies out there in terms of teaching systems. Most nurseries here follow the British format, where they follow what is known as the EYFS curriculum, the early years foundation stage curriculum, and how they meet the objectives set within that curriculum. They can use the Montessori method, they can use the Froebelian method. There are many methods out there. So I would, unless you have a personal preference, again, my guidance would be focus on the spaces, focus on the outdoor spaces. See, of course, there comes the teachers and the care and the nurturing that the nursery provides. But very often, whether it's nursery, schools, or universities, the number one deciding factor, barring proximity and cost, becomes the ability of the tour guide, whoever that tour guide is, right? So it becomes a marketing exercise more than a rational decision.
The story there is similar to a real estate story where they walk you around. They say, imagine your kid playing here or hanging out with these children. Is that
spot on?
Yeah,
spot on. It comes down to really the ability of the tour guide, and sometimes that might be the principal, it might be the receptionist, the admin, the ability of the tour guide to communicate the strengths of the nursery.
And so let's move on to the next stage of education, which is, in your case, you've got the Arcadia schools within that stage. What sets those schools apart? And I also want to dive into, I think in Arcadia, you've done some pretty innovative stuff, including a business course for younger children. And I'd love to hear a bit more about that.
Yeah. So Arcadia was founded on the principle that a school should be a place where children are happy. And that was really the foundational principle. That led on to a phrase that we often use, which is at Arcadia, which is happy teachers lead to happy students. So happiness was the core and is the core of our focus, and hence the name Arcadia. It stands for a land in Greece, which in ancient Greece was known for its simplicity. So with Arcadia, we always wanted to deliver education in the purest form, where the focus was on the child and on the happiness of the child. With that came this idea of building a homegrown, a Dubai-grown entrepreneurship curriculum. And the idea there was actually contrary to what people think, which is we did not want to teach children or students how to make money. Money was and is for us in terms of the curriculum delivery secondary. What was important was the belief that private enterprise can make real impact. The second was that an entrepreneur's mindset is such that if we develop those qualities in students, they can be applied in various settings. You don't have to be an entrepreneur. So,
but is the intention to train all children on sort of entrepreneurship skills, or is it a select group that opt into that?
It's actually all children. All students go through what we call the junior MBA program, where all of them, where we focus on developing the entrepreneurial mindset.
That's great.
A mindset that develops resilience, a mindset that develops the ability to be resourceful, a mindset that focuses on integrity. And this idea that you have the ability to create impact through enterprise.
And is that laced throughout their K through 12 experience, or is that a particular class they take on a single year and learn about those?
No, it's throughout the experience. It's all the way through to year 11, or what we call year 11, grade 10. And then beyond that, obviously, students get into their last 2 years where they do some form of a summative exam or exams and prepare for university applications.
So as a student, how would I experience that? And how would I, if I were telling my other friends about how my school is different, how would I describe what I've gone through at Arcadia compared to any of the other schools, particularly as it relates to those entrepreneurial skills?
Of course, it depends on the age group. But if your child was very, very young, they would have worked. Firstly, they would be doing weekly entrepreneurship classes, where they'd be learning about things like the marketing mix, the famous 4 Ps. They would be listening to stories on how brands differentiate themselves. They'd be listening to speakers coming in, sharing their personal journeys. And finally, leading on to the ability to create a project, which in essence is a business plan, where they would stand and deliver a presentation in front of a group of educators and investors with supreme confidence. We have 100% return on confidence building.
Amazing.
I grew up as a very shy child. My first presentation was at the age of 19. Students at Arcadia make their first presentation at the age of 7. Where they stand, and I know, look at nursery, there's show and tell, but when you have a PowerPoint or Google slide deck that's on a screen and you are standing there with an iPad in your hand, swiping slide by slide and explaining bullet points. So you're not reading off of a script, you're explaining bullet points to a selected audience. It's absolutely amazing that we're developing this skill of delivering presentations at such a young age and then receiving feedback, which you then build into their growth mindset as they go on into the school years.
And if I can go back to the point you made about the school being happy. So you attended a great school in Dubai. I will not name it, but it was a school that had and still has a reputation of getting people to amazing universities. Yet also a school where I feel, as I've spoken to more and more kids who've attended, they weren't particularly happy. And for the most part, they haven't sent their own kids there. So you have 2 super successful children of your own who did not go to your high school alma mater. Yeah. But you've obviously had great life results without necessarily having a very happy school experience. And we know there were other schools in that generation, one that's survived hundreds of years maybe now, that's notoriously unhappy. But the students who go there end up doing extremely well at university and then in their careers. So tell me a bit about why this happiness factor matters, or how much it matters. I mean, again, in our parents' generation, you were expected to go to school and almost get beaten with a ruler. And that was par for the course. Does it lead to better outcomes, I guess, being happy?
So I have always viewed life as hopefully, as roughly an 85-year journey.
Yeah.
Life expectancy. And in those 85 years, you will have phases of happiness. You'll have phases of stress. You'll have phases of pain. And what you, in essence, want to do is maximize on the phases of happiness. School is one such phase. And when parents make the decision on which school to select, yes, life outcomes are important because, in essence, you're planning for happiness post-school. But when you're compromising on happiness during school years to cater to happiness for, so just as an example, 6 years of a challenging school life does not compensate for 5 years of happiness in life journey, right? Just in a matter of time. For me, the school journey is a very important journey. When you get to my age, I'm 53 years old, and you tend to reflect back on life. You want to be able to reflect on your high school years, on the friends you made, on the difference they made to your life, on your first high school prom, on the teacher that made that difference, on your favorite arcade game, right? Whatever it was, you want to have positive memories, and you don't want that to be squashed by a miserable school experience. So really, that's the the foundation of where it comes from.
Yeah, I think just two thoughts on that. One is obviously the question of achievement, the focus on achievement versus happiness, and is there a compromise there? Because there are some schools that are considered feeder schools where the achievement matters a lot more than the happiness. And then the other thought, and maybe you can comment on both, is there are hard experiences that people go through that as a result of them being hard, they develop amazing camaraderie because they all faced it together. So when you think back of your high school friends, you probably had a common enemy to a large degree, and as a result formed very close friendships in facing that common enemy. So I guess it brings back to the philosophy of the school. And I know, I think both are equally important. I realize that as parents, we've changed. That in my case, my wife now cares a lot more about happiness than she does achievement. But I wonder if that's because we're in a more privileged society, and people who are maybe less privileged will care a lot more about the achievement than the happiness.
I think the premise that a lot of parents have is that school achievement and happiness are negatively correlated. They're not. You can be very high achieving and you can be happy.
Yeah.
And it is the
that's
job
a great point.
And it is the job of educators and parents, and that "and" is extremely important, to create an environment where that happens. A teacher plays a very important role, right? You end up not doing well on an assignment or a test or an exam. How the teacher handles that is crucial, but how the parent handles that is just as important, if not more. You do not want to create an environment where an outcome is going to define a student. Yeah. Any outcome, right? Be it a university admission, an A-level result, an AP result.
Both you and I know a lot of people who didn't do well in certain academic outcomes and then ended up doing extremely well in their professional and other outcomes in life.
Exactly. And, a very wise educator once told me, Navin, the world is run by those who graduated with C minuses. It's not the outcome, it's the process that led to that outcome, which is where the focus should be, right? Different students have different cognitive abilities. You're born with a certain cognitive ability. You develop on that ability based on habits that are instilled in you at very young ages. And there are environmental factors. There could be things going on at home, in your life, with your friends. So what's important is to create a culture within the school and the house environment where you can have these open conversations we received this outcome, but what was it that actually led to an outcome that wasn't as per expectations? And I think the teacher plays such an important role in this equation, as does the parent.
So Navin, again, it's interesting you made the distinction between preparing people to be financially successful as well as preparing them to be happy and having a good life. And again, that the focus of the school isn't about financial success. You were obviously within the family group, a very successful family group, very business oriented, all sorts of business interests. What was your personal journey to go from what was primarily, I guess, in many ways, building out new businesses, dollars and cents, to deep diving into education, which is not somewhere where you started off. You embarked on that later on in your career.
Yeah. So, growing up, my hero was and is my father. I saw him jet-setting all over the world. Sometimes he would take us along, and I wanted to be him. So when I looked at him and I wanted to be him, and he was and is a thorough businessman, I then decided, I wanted to pursue business as an undergrad education. I applied to the world's best undergrad business school. I got in, and it was, in those days also the motivation was I wanted to make my parents proud of me, as it is for many kids. I wanted my mom and my dad to say, we are very proud of our son. So it started with just that, just the basics. And there's part of every child, no matter what children say or do, there is a part of them that wants to make their parents proud of them. So that's really the initial motivation. Came back wanting to be close to family, close to my father and my mother, and really worked as hard as I could to, again, prove a point to my father that I was worthy of being the son of such a great business person. And as the years went by, obviously, I met my wife, who's also from a business family, and together we built a beautiful family. She was educated as a teacher. So she had gone into her own nurseries. In the meantime, for me, making money was important, not because I wanted to spend it. It wasn't even actually linked to happiness in those days, at least not directly. It was a barometer of success for me, to my father, right? That I could do this. So a lot of this was, I am my father's son. Yeah. And for a large part of my life, and arguably still till this day, that remains. In 2012, when my father decided that he wanted to build schools, I came on board only in 2016. So, for a large part, for 33 years of my professional, more of my professional career, 33 years, I was a business person running multiple businesses in different industries. And then came along education. And it changed my life because I decided very early on, and this has been my style for a long time, which is that I wanted to ensure that I had the credibility of the team below me as a professional. So I decided to start my education journey again, go do research at university, publish research, and now, along the way, I picked up a college counseling certificate. So I started a mentoring organization. I actually don't like to call it counseling because for me, it was much more than counseling. I wanted to give my life to kids. And to allow them to achieve their dreams. And those dreams are not necessarily linked to university admissions. It's actually largely linked to the process of getting there and to be with them when they have their down moments and to be there with them when they're celebrating their wins. And that's what really brought me joy.
I'm going to come back to the counseling journey. But before that, we talked a bit about selection of nurseries, and you said the rational choice would be proximity and cost as the two primary factors. What would you say would be the top three for choosing a K through 12 education? And are they the same?
So again, I would focus on happiness and the ability of the school environment to build on memories. I wouldn't ignore academic achievement. I think it's an important piece of this because it does lead to greater cognitive development.
And you'd measure that as a parent how? By looking at college admissions or standardized test results? How would you determine which school?
So the best schools are those that make the best progress, not the ones that attain the best outcomes. So there's a difference between progress and attainment. And so I'd focus on progress, never easy.
Because attainment is very easy. And oftentimes attainment, they're very selective schools. So they're getting the highest attaining students and producing the highest attainment results.
So in education, we have something called value add. What is the baseline where students enter? And once they graduate, what are their outcomes and what has been the progress?
And that's measurable.
That is measurable. So something called the cognitive abilities test, the CAT-4. And schools in Dubai do this very, very well. But they
report on it?
They report on it, but they don't actually market it well.
Interesting.
Because most parents don't understand the seriousness of that value add. And because it's a relatively complex measurement in terms of understanding it, students don't schools don't market it. So I'd focus on the value add. I would ask for something called the school profile, which every school in Dubai has by definition, because you have to submit it when students apply to universities in the United States. You have to submit a school profile. That school profile has a lot of information that you can't always get out of a tour. So school profile, value add, school environment, and really what's important to you, what are the school's core values, and are you able to see them demonstrate that as you walk around that building?
So let's talk a bit about the transition from school to university. And you talked about mentorship. And obviously, I know you and I've seen the amazing results you've had with children. And I know firsthand how you have this great ability to comfort them and soothe them through very difficult times. That industry was an industry that, particularly the college counseling, I think I'll remove the holistic mentorship approach for now and talk about college counseling. It's an industry that almost didn't exist. At least I wasn't aware of it when we applied to university, and now seems to be an almost mandatory part of children's experience, at least in the circles we're in. What's happening there, and what do you feel is the real value add?
So I think a few things are going on here. The first thing is just wealth creation. Dubai is a city that has prospered, continues to prosper, a lot of wealth, and parents prioritize education and say, okay, we want the best and the greatest to support our students in getting into the best and the greatest colleges.
If I may, so in Dubai, it's definitely everywhere, but it seems the global industry is huge. You go online and do a Google search on college counselors, and it feels like there are tens of thousands of them.
It is, and that is because of the complexity of the U.S. college application process. So if the Americans followed the British,
that whole industry might disappear.
That whole industry will disappear. Yeah. I think personally, the Common App, which is what the primary mode of applying to colleges in America, is not the right way to apply to universities. There's a number of challenges with it. Firstly, it's a very complex application, right? Grades is one thing. Extracurriculars, activities, profile building, recommendations, teachers' recommendations, counselor recommendation, external recommendations, essays, right? So there's a whole bunch of stuff.
And it's a full-time job, it feels like, for these kids. And it feels like they're engineering their lives towards this particular process.
And the challenge with that is that, firstly, it is a very cumbersome process, just in terms of sheer time. So they look for support. But then once you are at the end of this process and you've got your university admission, that admission is unconditional. So then it's about, hey, let's relax and enjoy our senior year. I'm not sure school was designed to basically take time, be on a vacation in the last part of grade 12.
It feels like the journey is not about learning, but much more about hitting that particular inflection point, that achievement of getting into the right university?
Yeah. Now, when you take you correspond that with the British, who's saying, look, this is not about profile building. We actually don't even give a space to put your activities down, right? This is about, we want to get to know you through a personal statement. Now, 3 short questions. We want to know your grades. We want to know your predicted grades, and that's it. Single page, done.
Yeah, super simple.
And grade 12 matters. So we're going to give you conditional offers, right? So you have to study all the way through to school. Life becomes, from an educator's standpoint, I can tell you, it is very sad to see a student at the last part of their school career basically not showing up to school.
Yeah. Given the complexity, and given it sounds like you believe there is a better way, and the British way to some degree is a simpler way that achieves the objectives, at least of keeping students engaged the last moment. Does it feel to you that reform is happening on the American side, or are they ever more complex?
No, sadly, I don't see the reform happening. It continues to be very complex. I don't see that changing. Bear in mind that if I am getting in early decision to my university of choice in the United States, I hear my decision in the middle of December. The next time I pay attention to my academics is September in university.
Interesting. Yeah. So you've got a year off, basically.
I mean, we know the research is clear on on what we call the summer slide. This is senior year plus summer slide, right? So you can imagine you show up to university having really not
exercised your mind
for
9
months. And that is just, I think that's the worst position to be in as a student. And then you're actually with peers who have done the IBDP on conditional offers, or who have done their A-levels, and who are right on top of their game, right? So there is clearly, the system is broken and needs to be fixed.
Within this industry of college counseling, it seems the fee structures are also immensely variable. You and I have heard of particular professionals in the field who charge more for counseling than you'd pay for 4 years at university. And then there are subsets who just help you write an essay, who tend to be obviously a lot more cost effective. What are your thoughts on that also, and how a parent should rationalize those different fee structures? What is the right fee to be paid, and for what service? Because to me, every time I hear of someone paying $500,000 to someone as a college counselor, it blows my mind. I'm utterly confused by it.
So if we're looking purely at university admissions, a driven student does not need a college counselor. And how driven a student is based on a number of things, including their own experiences and the experiences that their family demonstrates to them.
Yeah. Can I just interrupt here? So we've seen driven students with 4.0 GPAs, 1590 SATs, student class presidents not get into their top university choices. And we've seen far less driven students with the right college counselor get into their university choices. So do you stand by that? Because it feels like it's a lot more unfair than it would seem, or it should be.
So we're referring to US. So you will not face this problem in the UK.
Yeah.
The problem that you just outlined
is a US problem.
Is a US problem. The US process, unfortunately, is largely subjective. It fundamentally comes down to, when you're at that level, the level you just outlined, comes down to the reader, the personal views and biases of the reader, and the student's application.
And that reader is a single person?
Is a single person. The first reader is a single person.
Yeah. And does that reader, is he or she like an immigration officer? They decide whether or not you get into the country, or is there some sort of committee that follows?
Yes. So there's typically 2 readers for every application. What is prepared is a little note card. And then that application moves on to the next stage, which is committee, where the student is discussed based on that card by a group of individuals,
So
typically
what
10 to
was
12.
multiple essays and recommendations and everything else is now a card.
Comes down to a note card with a summary. And then
AI could generate today for you in 30 seconds. Yeah.
exactly. And then a discussion happens and a decision is taken. Now, to make matters more complex, the US does take into account legacy. That's another whole area. Does take into account athletes. So there's a whole recruitment process. And sadly, the way the system has developed, the more privileged kids have counselors helping them write essays, counselors opening up doors to coaches, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? So the system is broken. It is leading to greater inequalities within society. And the United States in particular, in my view, needs to, in terms of looking at this particular area, needs to improve the system so that this doesn't get worse.
We brought up very briefly AI. I want to dig a bit more into that, particularly within a high school context. So I guess two things. Are we still learning the right things given where AI is going? Because it feels like most of the stuff we spend a lot of time learning at school now is readily available for us in seconds and can be resolved far quicker than we'll ever be able to do mentally or through the skills we learn at school. So do you feel that high school, at least the way we know it today, is as relevant? And then how do you as Arcadia deal with AI within a context of assignments? Because I recently spoke to some high school seniors who told me that for every assignment they get, they put it into one AI to draft it, a second AI to edit it, and a third AI to humanize it so that they don't get caught by the AI checker.
Yeah.
And I guess there's that level of ability to distort the system and your learning outcomes. I wonder how schools adapt to those situations.
So fundamentally, as educators, our job is to develop metacognitive skills.
Which means what?
Which means the ability to think using frameworks within your brain and understand and grasp. Now, that when you are that dependent on a machine, on an LLM, that is at risk. So particularly at younger ages, where you are developing the skills to read, to write, this is a very, very high-risk environment. So I'm fully in support of schools who hold back the exposure to LLMs at the very early stages, at primary or elementary years. As you get into middle school, it gets more interesting. Because you have to prepare your students for high school and subsequently to college, and you have to accept that LLMs are a reality. It's here to stay. So the question becomes, how do you introduce this, and where do you introduce this? Now, there are extremes, even in Dubai, of how one should do this, but fundamentally, you want to give students the ability to put in the right prompts into an AI engine in order to get the right responses. Now, as much as, everyone's making such a big deal out of prompt engineering, right? And they call it prompt engineering, like we're building a spaceship or something. But the fact is, it's a pretty basic skill, right? I mean, you and I both know. You don't need to have a year-long course to develop prompt engineering, to know what prompts to put into an LLM. As you get into these crucial years, the key question becomes for educators is, how do we assess, right? How do we know that the student's work is the student's work, and have they met those crucial cognitive development skills that we are trying to impart?
And what does it even mean to say that it's the student's work? Because to what extent, at what point does you being aided by a device stop being your work? I mean, I use AI all the time, and it's functionally very helpful, and I still feel it's my work. Sometimes I use it as is, sometimes I edit it, but I'm prompting it. So it's an interesting philosophical question to me, which is, given that you've asked for a particular solution to a problem, I guess what I've heard in many cases that schools ask for you to submit the prompt itself. And as long as you can submit a prompt that shows your logic and your understanding and how you've adapted.
Yeah. In my view, the whole advent of LLMs should lead to a multi-prong approach when it comes to assessment. So looking at sort of assignments, feel free, use the LLM, submit your prompts, submit what you've done, and let me look through your thinking to reach your outcome.
Yeah.
Great. Exams, assessments. Come into class. Here's a paper. Here's a pen. Right.
Yeah.
More sophisticated. Here's your computer. Here's a locked browser. Here's a remote proctor that's looking at your eye movements, right?
So at least I know it's you doing it, and I know what you're thinking up there.
Exactly. So these two approaches, both absolutely acceptable. Mm-hmm. The worst case scenario, which some schools in Dubai have done, is we are banning LLM off our Wi-Fi's. Now, Wi-Fi will not allow you to access LLMs. Now, that is one approach, but the assumption there is that students are not going to log on to their personal hotspots and access the LLM.
Students find millions of ways to circumvent any system.
Exactly. I sometimes giggle when parents tell me we've taken away the phone of our kid, because little do they know that every single thing you can do on the phone, you can also do on the laptop, right? Pretty much every single thing. So whether it's chatting on WhatsApp or Instagram or TikTok, it can all happen on the laptop. So similarly, LLMs are here to stay. Banning them off networks is not good. Using them at times for finding the right research question is great. I love Perplexity as an educator because it gives me sources. So if I'm doing research, I can then go on and authenticate the information as opposed to saying, is this accurate or is this not, right? So there are different LLMs for different purposes, but I certainly believe they're here to stay. They need to be a part of middle to high school education. And I think what's worse, by the way, is that teachers are trying to determine whether a student has used an LLM based on their understanding of the student.
Yeah. Or in many cases, another AI engine, which within their own terms and conditions say we give lots of false positives, particularly if it's an academic piece of work which has high citations. So these things make mistakes too. And in fact, oftentimes the better your paper is, the more likely it will be marked as LLM produced, unfortunately.
Yes. Yeah. Educators are still trying to come to terms with this. And strangely enough, most of the LLM-generated applications are targeting the education sector, ironically, and educators themselves are struggling right now, right? So it's an interesting scenario. I don't see schools disappearing with the advent of AI, even though I fundamentally believe that everything that you learn academically in schools, you can learn at home.
Yeah.
You don't need to be in school. But
yeah, it's amazing. I mean, we didn't have a Khan Academy when we were kids, but what you can learn on Khan Academy is you basically can go through K-12 on your own if you'd like to.
Correct. And if you are able to homeschool your students, but then provide them with the social interactions that they need as they're growing up, you actually don't need school.
Yeah.
Right? Provide them with the sporting opportunities, the musical instruments, all of which you can do.
Which will bring me to, do we need universities? And that's the next question I'd like to jump to. And I think I'd like to personalize it a bit. So you went to the top undergraduate business school in the world, yet you knew you were coming back to a family business, and your son also went to that top school and came back into the family business. We know there are billionaires out there in the world who today pay kids not to go to university and to do their own startups. What's your sense of the importance of these name brand universities in today's world?
So,
And if you can personalize it to how's it been important to you? Obviously, you have a huge loyalty to your alma mater, but it's when I think what I know you personally, when I think of how much of a change it's made to your life, I don't know if it's had a real financial impact, at least.
so firstly, there's a fundamental assumption that we go to university to learn.
Yeah.
We don't go to university to learn. University is about going to an institution for 3 to 4 years to become an adult at the undergraduate level. Along the way, you do a little bit of learning, you have some fun, you make some friends, and you undertake typically or you are in an environment where several high-risk activities are happening. And God willing, you come back
in one piece.
Learning everything you learn at university, you can learn outside of university. Mm-hmm. The world is still coming to terms with this basic understanding of what university is. Now, you've been through it. I've been through it. We know what a university life is. And we know, we learn, for many of us, we learned how to wash our clothes at university. We learned how to iron our clothes, right? You learned how to cook. You learned how to introduce yourself to somebody who you've never met. All that happened at university. So,
and that's assuming your university experience involves traveling and being away from the family. And
correct.
And that you grew up in a privileged household where you didn't have to wash or iron or cook.
Correct. Yeah. So everything you learn at university, you can learn outside of university. You go to university for different reasons. The world gives undeserved respect to formal education qualifications. You hold a PhD, you hold a master's, you get a sense of respect. And I would even then expand that to university brand names. Where you go to university gets you a sense of undeserved respect. You walk into a meeting, small talk, oh, you went to an Ivy League or you went to Stanford. Oh, you must be smart, right? And that's how the meeting starts. That's not always a good thing. That's not always a good thing because the expectations placed on you in terms of your ability, of your knowledge are very, very high. So you find it when you are in these environments and you graduate from these environments, you find it very difficult to say, I really don't understand this. Can you please explain it to me? Right? It just takes a long time for it to come out of your mouth. And that's not a good thing, right? So for me, yes, the way the world is today, brand names do matter. Formal educational qualifications do matter. University qualifications do matter in terms of your ability to then use that to your advantage as you head into life. Is it a deal breaker? No way. No way.
So here's a scenario for you. You're interviewing for your alma mater. You've got this amazing kid who gets in. You feel you put in a really high recommendation for them. You realize they're going to get in. They get in, and then they come back to you 2 months later and they say, listen, I want to defer because I've got this startup idea that I want to do in India. What would you say in that conversation? You're their mentor, and they're giving up, again, an education at Penn or at Wharton for a startup at age 18 in India.
So funnily enough, I did have a kid like this. He came to me wanting to go to Wharton, ended up getting deferred in his early round. In his regular round, got into Wharton, got into Stanford, sure got into a bunch of other universities, ended up accepting Stanford, but never landed there. Went to India and created the largest unicorn India has ever seen.
Yeah, so I interviewed the Stanford side of that story.
Yeah, so Adit Palicha spent time in my office. In fact, he had a great bus pooling idea that he pitched to me. Quite honestly, I would pat that student on the back. I would say, well done.
Post facto, or again, this is now the stage before he's embarking on this, and you're realizing you're speaking to an 18-year-old kid, and you'd still pat on the back and say, go for it, my friend?
Life, so, when I talked about developing the entrepreneurial mindset, part of that is the ability to take risk and to be comfortable with it.
Yeah.
So if an 18-year-old is comfortable giving up the Stanfords and the Whartons of the world to go out there and take that risk, in my view, one should never take that away. Because they have crossed that chasm which holds us back for most of our life. They've managed to cross it at a very young age. The jump to being a risk seeker. And we don't have to look far, right? The city we're in, our rulers, the risks that they've taken and developed what is the greatest city in modern times. It is because of this ability to take risk and be comfortable with it. So if an 18-year-old is willing to do that, by all means, and as heartbreaking as it is for most parents that, oh, my kid may not go to college, it is a remarkable achievement in terms of a parent's values that you've actually instilled in your child for him or her to be able to make that
And how
decision.
would you comfort the parents in that situation? So you pat the kid on the back, the parents will call you probably weeping, saying, my child wants to drop out of Stanford or Penn. I can't believe it. What would be your words to them?
It would be, so dropout is a very strong word.
Yeah.
So the way the world has developed, if everything goes to plan, they should drop out.
Yeah.
That would be great, right? They would have hit the next unicorn. They would have developed a great company, made a tremendous impact in society. But if they don't, you can always go back. So you can, as you gave me an example, you can defer, you can reapply. You know what? You can go to university at 21.
Yeah.
We think that's not the norm. But if you're a Singaporean boy, you go to university at 21
Because of military service.
because of military service, right? So the fact is, it is done. Universities are completely open to it, and particularly the Americans. For them, it's all about context. So if you took time out to go do your own startup and you failed, not only universities welcome you, real-world organizations are like, we want this person.
Yeah. So you built, again, you and your family and the Shirawi family in partnership have built a very significant, very successful, multi-decade business. I want to jump into a bit about the type of people you hire in that process. And I'll start off with, to what extent are you looking yourselves for these highly credentialed people? So do you filter by Penn, Stanford, MIT, whatever it is? And what percentage of your executive team, other than the family itself, hails from these universities?
So, firstly, I never filter by university. I also fundamentally
At any level.
At any level.
Even if it's, you're looking for an MBA for your finance department.
Who in their right mind would be looking for an MBA? Right? I mean, if there's a degree that's reputable but doesn't teach you a single skill, it's probably that one, right? So no.
So it's amazing for someone who's so focused on education, particularly university education. You've helped so many people get there. There's a very healthy level of cynicism about what it actually means.
I mean, look, the world has also changed, right? Interviews, right? The famous interviews, right? That we've all done and probably continue to do in some context or the other when it comes to hiring people. I've come to the realization, and there's research that proves this, that interviews are actually pretty pointless. I can challenge you that if you interview a series of candidates for multiple positions in the morning, they're more likely to succeed than if you interview them in the afternoon. If you've had a bad day at home, well, God bless the interviewee, right? So interviews are opportunities for us to put our biased perspectives on a candidate. Where I think and that's where Bayt plays such an important role, is the technology piece that allows us to really understand the CV, the resume. If we as leaders pay more attention, more time to the engine, to the AI engine that is giving us the feedback on a particular CV, that this is this person's life.
Yeah.
We're mapping it out for you. These are the struggles that they've been through. You don't need to do an interview.
Yeah.
Right. So I've more and more actually come to not appreciate the interview and say, look, if a candidate has reached my level after already going through a series of interviews, the last thing they want to do is another interview.
Sure.
Right. So I'm very, very focused on the CV and understanding really the plotting the life.
And it sounds, and I just want to clarify, when you're looking at the CV is great at exhibiting a story of experiences and perhaps skills, but not necessarily culture. And so when you're interviewing, are you saying that you prefer to look at the skills and the experiences over the culture? Or do you bring a healthy mix of both in, or do you just lean into the culture?
So when I'm interviewing, I'm fundamentally looking for attitude.
Which is a culture.
Yeah, because skills can be picked up very easly, right? And you also, in the advent of LLMs, what skills are you really looking for? So looking for attitude. And that is a function of the failures that individual has had, and are they willing to discuss them?
And so do you dig into those? Do you specifically ask about failures?
I specifically ask about failures, but
oftentimes people give really wishy-washy answers about their failures and their shortcomings, that I've never really failed, or
that's the person you don't want on your leadership team. But coming back to what else I look for, right? Really, family background. Now, when I say family background, I'm not looking necessarily for what are the educational qualifications of your parents, but what kind of environment were you raised in? Were you exposed to struggle in any form? So, there's nothing more touching for me when, a candidate, I remember a recent candidate saying, my mother was an elementary school teacher and my father never went to college and had to make money working on a construction site. That to me, and then this person sitting in front of me with a degree, I'm like, that's the person I want. Right? So to understand the journey before the person's working life, to me, is extremely important.
And it sounds like you're understanding the whys of this person. Why are they doing what they're doing? The motivations, because that helps you ultimately know how to keep them engaged and moving along.
Yes.
Navin, thank you so much for an absolutely delightful and insightful talk. I think we've covered every part of the development cycle of a human being, right from when they enter nursery all the way to them getting into a workplace. And it's been absolutely wonderful. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.